The anatomy of a slimline style pen. These are comfort grips. The customer does not want the grips, which is actually very popular. People like the big middle band, but they don't like the rubber grip. And I'd actually prefer to do them without the grips myself. You show off more of the blank. When you do the grips, what they have you do is when you're turning it, you cut a parting tool, you cut a tenon on this thing, and you actually take off the first half of this upper blank and get it down to the tube, and then you slide the rubber grip on. And the fit never does work. It's just an ill fit between the blank and the grip, and then the nib and the grip's never right either. The thought's there. I understand what they're trying to do, but I prefer to leave the grips off myself. Slimlines, ironically, are the pens that beginning turners tend to gravitate to because they're cheap. And that's why they're good sellers. People don't want to spend a huge fortune on a pen. It's a good quality pen. People will knock the Slimlines, and the plating's a little thinner on these. I mean, it's made to a price point, but they are decent quality pens. The funny, ironic thing about it, though, is that they're not the easiest pens to put together, especially for a beginner. They're very finicky. There's tricks to it. It takes experience to really do it one after another, and do it right and do it well. A lot of the more expensive pens, the fit's better. They're just easier to assemble. But very few pieces. You got your front pieces. You got the transmission. I'm not sure what the correct term is. I don't think anybody is. Throughout YouTube and that, people call this the transmission, and that works. So you got the transmission, the nib. The band just floats on the transmission when you get that assembled, and then in the rear of the pen, you have the finial goes into the clip. So I like to start with the nib. One of the tricks is when you're assembling a pen, you don't want to be all cocked up. You want to be square. Make sure your tube's clean. There's no burrs. Make sure that the fitting's square. And then you put it in your press or whatever you're using. See how I got that off though? It's hard to juggle this stuff. You see me on camera on the quiet clips, but I fumble. It's hard to juggle this stuff, but I got the pen press just starting to press. Now make sure that it's square. And if it doesn't push in, stop. Figure out why. Don't just bubba and strong arm it down. Figure out why it's not going together. It helps if you see I'm starting to go a little crooked, turn it a little bit. Put a little pressure on it. Guide it. One thing you do want to watch, though, when you get close, you can get your skin caught between. You got to watch that. But smoothly guide it in. Now, here's the trick to Slimline pens. All the Slimline kits, cheek line, comfort grips, everything except the Pro, which is a click. That's different. But all the Slimline varieties all hinge on pushing this transmission in right. When you grind down your ends, or mill the ends, or whatever you do to prepare the ends, if you take too much off this brass tube, you're going to mess with the sizing of this pen. These pens lend themselves to being adaptable because it depends on how far you push the transmission in where this thing is going to come out. Ideally, if you kept the tube the exact length that is supposed to be in the kit, ideally you want to press this transmission in to this little band right there, this groove. You see the brass part, and then there's a little silver, and then they have a groove. And that's the mark that tells you how far to push this in. But what I like to do is when I assemble these, I test the water. Now you get this thing feeding in smooth. Now keep your eye on where this band is. I'm going to stop right there. You see, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit. I'll probably go just a little bit further in practice. But you leave a 1/8 inch, 1/16 to an 1/8, somewhere in between. And then it's a matter of patience. You're not in a hurry. You know, fit things out first. Take your time. Now, look at that. That is as far. I'm glad I stopped short, because had I pushed that into that band, what would happen is the ink would be sticking out when it's retracted. That's perfectly where it needs to go. So whether in processing or whatever, I milled this thing too short. So that's the natural fitment that you get with these pens. So luckily I did stop. That was a good example. I mean, I did not realize that was going to happen on this one. But you trial and error, and okay, I'm coming up short when when the ink's retracted, it's only that far. Okay, no problem. You unscrew the ink cartridge, put it back in the press, and then push it the rest of the way. But don't just go right to that mark to begin with. Feel it out. And then the band just floats. Now, I'm not going to have a problem on this one because the chrome plating's all right. But usually the black and the gold are the worst. Copper will give you problems, but you can't get that all the way in. When you dry fit it, it'll stick right there. Now, you could take the time and take a round file and you could file out the inside of that hole. Ideally, that's what you would do. But I have found in practice that if you're real gentle and you're stuck right there, but you got enough of a nib sticking out that you can get it fit. Okay? I'm fumbling. If you're real gentle and put it in the press, you can actually push it. You can push it in. You don't necessarily need to file it. Let's see if I can balance all of this. See, I'm crooked, but I very gently, you see I'm off right there. So what you don't want to do is keep forcing it. You're going to crack the acrylic or whatever your material is. Take your time. Feel things out. If you got a problem starting and forming, fix it before you go too far. Okay? And then, as always with pens, you want to look at it. Okay, I got a blue highlight. I want that blue highlight to match through the pen. And there you go. And this one, again, being a dark color, I'm taking off camera. I'm just using my shirt, but get my finger marks and it's collecting static. It's a very staticky day here. But there you go.